Yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody to our KGM annual meeting. It's so nice to see all of you. And kind of strange to know that it's my last meeting as board chair. So thank you all for being here. So in the next hour, we will have an update from Christine, a bit of a state of the state and some vision of where KGM is going. And during the second half, of course, we'll have the election. So thank you all for being here to vote. If you have to drop off or anything like that, please just let us know because we can probably take a vote in the chat ahead of time. And if during this conversation you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat, either directly to me or Christine. And if anything's timely, just raise a hand and let us know. We want to be open. We also know that we have relatively short time today. So like I said, it's really hard to believe that this is my last meeting as board chair. It's been a wild ride, and it's been incredible to be on this journey with all of you. And it's amazing to think back that when I started as board chair, we've seen a lot of world changes since then. We've been through a pandemic. We've been through October 7th. We've seen the leadership transition of Melissa Yaverbaum, who was with us for 10 years. We are experiencing what is happening in the world right now and the political climate and shifts. And what I have to say is that I have been so inspired by all of you as I've watched us all not just rise, but act and to really do what is needed for the state of not just the Jewish museum field, but the state of the Jewish people and community and in turn the world. And I just want to say how inspired I am by all of you. It's really been a pleasure as board chair to get to work with so many of you and to get to see the incredible work that you're all doing. And I just, between the White House summit that we held with IMLS and rallying with so many of you on calls online for affinity groups or talking circles, with just like the support you've all shown, with Christine bringing us fresh vision. I'm so proud and kind of amazed that after these few years as board chair that we are in such a different place. And I think KGM is more important than it's been. And while the current situation and moment we are living in is not new, it feels elevated and heightened in ways that I don't think any of us maybe really imagined. And it's not just about DC and Paris and Boulder, but recognizing that we are living in really scary and challenging times. And I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you for the colleagues in our field, and just to say and remind us all that even though I will not be our board chair anymore, I'm really proud to stay on the board as immediate past board chair and to welcome such an incredible slate of next leaders. I feel really grateful to have so many wonderful colleagues in all of you. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for being a part of this work, and to say that we are all needed in this more than ever. And I know we can't all solve the problems of the world, but what I have seen is that by coming together, we can instill confidence in one another, in our institutions, and really elevate our ability to do the work that we all set out to do. So again, thank you to Christine for leading us, to all of you for being colleagues and partners in this. It's really bittersweet to step down as board chair, but I'm delighted to know that we have such an incredible team coming up behind me. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christine.
Great. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that so much. And I echo many of Laura's sentiments. I'm excited to be here. It's strange for me too, to be in a transition, and now we're having another transition. But of course, it's always exciting to see new things come to formation. I'm doing double duty here while I admit people while also talking to you. So Anne, I just made you a co-host if you can monitor the admit. That way we can keep people coming in. All right. So this is exciting. I think most of you know me, but if you are new here and you don't know me, I'm Christine Beresniova, as Laura just alluded to, and I'm the executive director of KGM. And as I sat down to write this presentation, I reflected on the fact that I feel like I've been writing a lot of presentations in the last 6 months of my role here, and many of you have already heard some of them. or some of what I'm about to say as well. And there have been urgent communications about the near total erasure at this point of federal cultural funding, discussions about the continuing war in Israel, of course, and the hostages and how we hope they come all home soon. Statements about the targeting of Jewish memorials and museums by vandalism and threats and now deadly attacks. And so 5 of my first 6 months here feel like they've been marked by considerable political confusion and chaos in Washington, D.C., and political violence, as Laura was just discussing, targeted at Jews and our allies from Paris to D.C. to Canada to Colorado to beyond. And I have to say that this morning, I felt uplifted and truly grateful that I was invited to join the JCPA conference in DC. And I think some of you on this call might have been there as well, for JCRC professionals. And I've known Amy Spitalnik from the JCPA for years. I am not a member of a JCRC, obviously, and have never attended this conference, but she and I were on a call with Lou from Canvas a couple of weeks ago for a stakeholder call. And she was like, you should come and join this conversation. And I was so glad that I did, in a sort of ironic way, because it was heartening to hear that every single communal organization across the US is going through the same thing that we are going through right now. These are not normal times. And we are trying to figure out how to raise up our missions and live as our full Jewish selves. And if that's not enough, we also have to deal with this anti-Semitism that keeps being thrust on us and our work. And we have to figure out how to navigate internal rifts and communal division, as well as engage and share our work with other intersecting communities to which we also belong. And I think for me, this idea of community in the plural is really key here. The IES, because there is no one community that we're talking to or for, and there's no one way to approach this moment. And so as we talk a little bit today here, I'll give you what truly a mid-year report. I will report out where we are at this moment. These are notions that we are considering. These are initiatives that we are thinking about. And they may change. They may change as these times change. So in that vein, if you do have a question, this is not intended to be a true town hall. Really, the goal of today is to get to the board vote so we can install that new board and then move forward as we refine our vision and direction for the next 12 to 18 month period. And then once we get that process going, we'll have a lot more to bring to you, our membership, to really think about and chew on and respond to. So please definitely drop your thoughts in the chat. If I have time, I will answer the questions in the chat before the vote. If not, I will respond to each one of you individually, because that is the magic of Zoom. So as I mentioned regarding the meeting at the JCPA this morning, it was really just a marvel. We were marveling at how we still feel like we're in the continuation of a very difficult period in a difficult world that we have been living in for a while now. And everyone at the meeting this morning kept saying, I didn't ask to lead in these times. I didn't plan on having to deal with this and then that and then the other things. And I can't imagine that any little Jewish child out there or non-Jewish child who loves Jewish museums out there right now is saying, that's the career I want. That's it. I'm going to grow up and do that really complicated, hard, fatiguing, exhausting, unclear thing. But nevertheless, right, CAJM is a marvel, and it is amazing because what I have learned in the last 6 months is that its members continue to rise to the challenge. And when I accepted this job last November, I dared to hope, maybe I jinxed it, that we were entering into a moment where we could rise a little bit above the wave of challenges facing our cultural institutions because of the work that preceded me, because of the board and the staff and Melissa and the advisory council who came before me, who built this partnership and coalitions and programs to really address these moments. And within a month and a half after starting, CAJM proudly released its Museums Respond Strategies for Combating Anti-Semitism and Hate field guide. And for those of you who don't remember or know what it looks like, I'll share my screen here. This was the culmination, not just of one summit, but of years of work done by many of you on this call that resulted in the national summit with our partner IMLS and this field guide, which is on the right of your screen. But 5 days after we released this field guide, the current political administration in DC archived the US National Strategy to Combat Anti-Semitism, which served as the impetus for this guide. And then it subsequently dismantled the IMLS, who was our project partner in this work, a very important partner. And so this interrupted this partnership, and it raised concerns about our development planning and our business model as we saw these federal funds dry up. And it became a very stressful time. I don't have to tell all of you, you know that. We initially identified about 6 institutions who were immediately affected by the initial wave of cuts, but this was just the beginning. It was the beginning of seeing people lose money and of realizing more deeply what these cuts meant on a more comprehensive level for our work as member institutions, as partners, as people who love libraries, as people who see these institutions as a part of our Jewish values. And the ripple effects are still coming. In May alone, we tallied at least $1 million in lost federal grants to our member institutions. That's 1 month in $1 million in 1 month. And we know there's potentially more to come because NEH awarded 17 grants in 2024 to Jewish themed cultural projects for a total of over $2 million. And as we dug deeper and started to try and understand what was going on, we saw that IMLS funding for Jewish projects disproportionately affected CAJM members. So over the last 20 years, the Institute of Museum and Library Services granted nearly $6 million of cultural support to 57 Jewish institutions or projects. 43 of those institutions or projects were done by CAJM members. And while $6 million in the aggregate maybe doesn't sound like a lot of money over 20 years, it might put it into perspective to think of it this way. $6 million over 20 years is about $300,000 a year. That is the equivalent of 1 year's worth of total operating budget for 21 of our member institutions. We have 21 of our current member institutions have budgets below $300,000 annually. So it's the equivalent of one of our institutions just losing their entire budget. Some of these institutions, as you'll see by the chart on the right-hand side, are singularly operating in their states or cities to help buoy and share Jewish culture. And so these are considerably profound losses whose ramifications we're not yet sure how deep they're going to go. And it's very difficult to disrupt and replace anti-Semitism, which has been such a key focus of CAJM for the last 3 or 4 years, without sustaining the places where people can make the connections to authentic Jewish history and culture, like museums or education centers or archives. And so this continues. We are seeing ripple effects through increased demands on funding sources across the entire sector. And many of our member institutions, even if not directly affected, have spoken out of this profoundly collegial awareness and grief that these cuts go beyond just our museums to our neighbors, to our colleagues, and to our allies, whose stories we also don't want to lose. But even in the midst of this challenging moment, as I said, CAJM always rises. Several members of our advisory council have suggested, because they are very wise, and that is why they are on our advisory council, to think of this moment, which we cannot control the external circumstances, as an opportunity to reflect on what wasn't working, and as a compelling crisis that allows us to reimagine and rethink what can we do? We see now some of the gaps and concerns. What can we do to sustain ourselves and future-proof going forward? And one of those advisors who I was speaking to, I think he's actually on this call, also reminded me one of the best things about working in Jewish museums, and I'm going to quote him directly, so David, you're going to hear yourself quoted, is that we get to champion the effervescence of Jewish culture. And I loved this phrasing, so naturally I stole it and put it in this talk, because I think that's what draws all of us to this work. We have this ebullient opportunity to be not just cultural guardians or practitioners, but culture creators, to be the community that morphs Jewish storytelling into Jewish meaning, to be the people that those little Jewish kids, my 6-year-old, an 8-year-old daughter and son, will look to and say, oh, that is the work I want to grow up to be doing. And this affinity for our work and for people who love to come and view our work is, of course, what led to the formation of CAGM 30 years ago, long before me, by much wiser people in the field. And I think this impetus cannot be underestimated. Jewish museums wanted to unify their journeys under a shared umbrella. They wanted to explore fundamental questions of Jewish culture and Jewish creativity and Jewish life together. And in this particular moment in America, this feels like a marvel to me that we didn't retreat into our corners, right? This feels like what we're trying to do now for self-protection. But we wanted to do this together, and insularity doesn't protect us, right? We rise together. And while the people doing this work have changed, as is normal, people come and go, and the museums have grown and changed, which is exciting, and the context that we're living in has changed, there are some through lines in CAGM's story that are still as resonant today as they were at its founding. And so when I was in New York City for our East Coast Regional Directors Forum about a month ago, I went back through CAGM's history. So if you were at that convening, you've seen this chart, you've heard this story before. And it reminded me, as I was rethinking CAGM's institutional history, that this was an idea that a few people had in the 1970s when they wanted to better define the contours of our field and to figure out how to move forward with its professionalization. And it started with 8 museums. And they were looking for a sense of connection and solidarity as they pursued what was sometimes very lonely work. And the subsequent decades in the late 1980s and 1990s and into the early 2000s were about connecting the field and determining what could a museum or an organization do to support this burgeoning creation of this Jewish museum cultural field. And then they had to figure out how to fund it, right? So that's where we are still today. But that period was a moment of proliferation and real growth for the field. And then CAGM spent the last decade, many of you on this call, this is your decade, expanding its work to find commonalities across the field more globally and to address enduring social issues, such as justice, community, fighting anti-Semitism, and sustaining democracy. And it was, and I think until very recently, was a period in which culturally specific narratives were heralded as fundamental to the American story at last. Like, thank goodness, we always knew this, but it was gaining wider purchase. It was a time of celebrating diverse narratives. And now it's 2025. I don't know where we are, lucky me, but that's okay. It's likely we won't know what this next period of 10 years will bring until we're on the other side. But there are 2 things that I am absolutely certain have connected all the periods before this and will continue to drive us forward into whatever the future holds in the next 10 years. And the first one is there's a need for community. That is clear throughout every decade of CAGM's existence. And there is a need for us to figure out approaches to building and sustaining connection in and across our cultural work. And those 2 things are non-negotiables. They're the foundation of what CAGM is and will continue to be. So we don't need to start from scratch, thank goodness, and figuring out where we're going forward. And as we induct a new board today, we don't have to begin at the beginning. But we are at a point, I think, for reimagining, which is an exciting point, the ways that we get to build and rebuild and expand our community together right now. And this is why we've started to talk about CAGM, which is an advocate for Jewish museums as vital and essential resources. I'm trying to remember our tagline, but we're also thinking about it as it's got this beautiful ability to promote Jewish storytelling in American museums, in any space where there's a Jewish story being told, in any space where there's a Jewish interlocutor who gets to speak, so to speak, for him or herself through art or artifact or creation. That's where CAGM wants to be. And this highlights a journey, I think, where we can all agree that we're on as institutions. I've talked to everybody, I think, on this call by now, at least once, if not more, that we're all exploring a very similar question about what does it mean to be Jewish in America, across the diaspora, in our local and regional communities. And this is something that non-Jews are also asking us, especially right now. And this focus on storytelling allows us to expand the potential networks into which we can grow across the US, into archives and libraries and educational centers that also help make those stories more accessible to wider audiences and encourage people to also come and to visit us as well. And so this passion for Jewish storytelling through and with our institutions helps to set our priorities going forward. And one of those, of course, is to sustain the pipeline of current and emerging Jewish museum professionals. It's kind of a sad, ironic story that the person that I tapped to help us lead our new emerging professionals affinity group emailed me a month later and said, I'm leaving the field. And I was like, no, I should have been faster. I should have been sooner to get this group going. But we really do want to sustain and promote not just new people to the field, but this continuity as we all go through the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years together. We also want to support the exchange of resources, skills, and ideas among Jewish museum practitioners. How can we help the field do our jobs better? We want to spearhead research and evaluation about the state of the field to appeal to donors. We need those numbers to write white papers about best practices, to respond to the press. I had a press inquiry a month ago and I was like, I don't have the numbers I need. And to articulate our impact cohesively and consistently. And of course, to advocate for Jewish museums as third spaces, sources of dialogue, and places of Jewish continuity, all at the same time. Those are 3 different goals, but we're doing them all at the same time. So we can continue to rise to the moment of exploring what it means to be Jewish and to combat the dangerous stereotypes about what isn't true about us, that other people say about us. And to provide collaborative engagement among those of us who value Jewish storytelling. And that can be somebody who's Jewish or not Jewish. They can be a practitioner or a museum goer. We connect and create the community of people who see Jewish stories as part of the prism of American life. And so to this end, like many of you, we are embracing the opportunity, whether we asked for it or not, to reevaluate how we connect to the people around us, to our communities, how we tell our stories, and how we share the Jewish culture that we all value so much. I'm grateful that every single one of you is here, took time out of your day, volunteered to serve, will volunteer to serve, that you are part of this journey with us. And so this is the true mid-year reporting part of the talk. You can read the slide and see the numbers. Some of the things that I've had the fortune and ability to do, thanks in large part to the board, especially Laura, who has been a great source of support during this. I can't believe I just started working with you, and now you're still on the board as our interim press chair. But it's been a difficult 5 months, and I appreciate Laura was always on the end of that call whenever I said I need to talk to you, I need some advice. We have been prioritizing through it all, just like the anecdote I just shared with you, connection in this moment. We have been holding talking circles, and thank you to Avi and Alicia and Anne, if you are all on this call, for helping continue that important ability to talk to one another. We have been inviting new speakers and partners, creating affinity groups. This is an ongoing process because I've heard all of you say we want connection, but we also want new and creative ways to mix and mingle and think about different parts of the puzzle that we're all trying to solve. We've been hosting regional convenings. We want to host more. And my work behind the scenes that you may not see as well, especially with the board and the executive committee. I'm so grateful for our executive committee. They've always been there. They've always shown up when I said, I need to talk to you about this budget. We've got to make sure KGM is shored up for the next 30, 40, 50 years administratively, financially. So you may remember getting a newsletter where we're talking about diversifying our membership tiers so we can create more targeted benefits for each one of those tiers and administrative responsibilities and infrastructure roles like that. So KGM is secure going into its future. And there's so much more ahead. And we'll keep you updated on all that in the calls that we have going forward. But you will definitely hear us talk about going forward, our plan, our business plan and development planning, our conference committee for spring 2026. So I know all of you are waiting on bated breath. I'm not going to announce it today. We should be able to announce some details within the next 3 or 4 weeks. So stay tuned for that. We're regalvanizing our work building bridges. I know that's such an important part of KGM, and we want to sustain the current partnerships and build new ones. We want to refresh our comms, and a big thank you to Anne, who is already helping us to start to do that, because we want to reconsider what is most meaningful and how we communicate about our traveling exhibits. I've heard from just about everyone that this is huge. What we create, we want to share it with each other and with our other communities. News about our network and field-worthy practices. And we're also exploring more professional development. We've heard a number of people asking for, professional development in different areas, at different tiers, at different stages of our professional lives, such as working with JFNA. I've already talked to JFNA about doing leadership in crisis. training seminars, or I've also talked to the Jewish Cultural Quarter in Amsterdam, who has this, very well-known pedagogy that they've piloted on dialogue in museums. So things like that, we'd love to bring those to our membership in the coming year. And we're determining the feasibility of hosting another regional conference, another regional convening with our directors forum. So if you want to host to that, let me know. And amplify our resources, work with AAM, develop working groups on digital strategies. There's so many different notions, as I mentioned, that we're already discussing for how we can support this goal of supporting you and supporting Jewish storytelling. And so with that, I will move us into, I think, the most important part of today. I will definitely, oh my goodness, I see that there's some new messages in the chat, but what I'll do is, if there's any questions that have not been answered, I will respond to you personally, because I can see what you've dropped in the chat, and I will pass it over now to Jordana and Laura.
Thank you, Christine. I just also thank you for that beautiful presentation. And I just want to reiterate what Anne dropped into the chat, that if you haven't yet signed up for our affinity groups or talking circles, the links are there to do so. They've been really wonderful and helpful this season, so I hope you'll all join us. And in the vein of generations and eras of CAJM, it is amazing to me to see how many people have given their time and treasure and talent to this organization over the years. And I am so grateful to many of you, my wonderful colleagues, who will be stepping down from the CAJM board. So I just want to name and call out a few people who have given so much to this organization. Frady Aber, Director of Education at the Contemporary Jewish Museum. Sherry Bernstein, Vice President and Museum Director at the Skirball in LA. Saul Davis, Executive Director of the Jewish Museum of Maryland. Dahlia Fisher, who was the Director of External Relations at the Maltz Museum. Guguletu Moyo, who's an independent consultant. Josh Perlman, who's a strategic consultant for the Weitzman. Abigail Rappaport, curator of Judaica at the Jewish Museum. Marcia Semmel, who is so much more than just an independent consultant, as the title would say, and Colin Weil, who is also now an independent consultant. I just want to say how much you have all brought to me into this organization. I want to thank you all so much for the time you've given to this board. And I also just want to note that I'm thrilled to have some incredible talent coming up behind all of you, and I know that you'll still be there. But thinking about what comes next, I'm going to turn it over to Jordana.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you, Christine, for such a large amount of information in such a small period of time. The work that you've been doing in the last 6 months is remarkable, especially given all of the unforeseen challenges that we've seen as a nation, a community, a religious community, a museum community. So as many of you know, I chaired the committee, the nomination committee, and I'm so excited to share our new members who are joining. First, I'll just talk a little bit about the strategy that went into the process. Christine, Laura, and I met several times and talked about where the gaps were in our representation. Of course, CAJM is a national organization, and we want to represent the nation and where Jewish museums are. We also discussed how we can enhance the board with different roles, experiences, resumes of different folks who work at institutions that have been very involved or have not been very involved, but really also thinking about the individual. What do these individual people bring to the CAJM board? What do we see them, how do we see them growing within our organization and growing our organization? So if anyone is interested more so in the process that we went through, we did a lot of direct outreach. We did e-blasts. We reached out to individuals. We reached out to groups of people. It came from CAJM's, e-blast. It came from us. But if anyone wants more details, feel free to reach out, and I can give you more specifics. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our new board members. I think, and Christine and Laura, let me know what you think about this. I think I'll read the bios for each of them and then invite them to share a sentence or two about what excites them about joining CAJM and what inspired them to join. So I hope, because I cannot see every single person on this Zoom chat, I'm hoping that the people are here. So first, I'm going to see if Sean Burris is here.
Here.
Yes, great. Hi, Sean. And of course, I'm reading a very small bio for everyone. Their resumes are much larger, much more impressive, much more inspiring. I encourage everyone to do a Google search after this meeting. But Sean is the curator of Judaic art at the North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh, I always do that, North Carolina, where he stewards a collection of historic and contemporary Judaic art in conversation with the museum's global collection, and he directs the museum's initiative for Jewish art and culture. Sean has also served as a curator at the Bowdoin College Museum of Art in Maine and as the assistant director at the Textile Museum in DC. He has a BA in religious studies from UNC Chapel Hill and an MA PhD in religion at Duke. So I'm not sure which team he roots for, but that sounds like an interior struggle that I look forward to learning more about.
Absolutely. The quick answer is Chapel Hill. I'm so happy to be invited to join the board. I just would say that I would emphasize two things. The connection and community that Christine talked about has been so important to me. I'm in my second year as the curator of Judaic art at the North Carolina Museum of Art. And I can think of no more pivotal moment than the DC summit that was held, the Museums Respond summit, in really changing my attitude towards the job. I came on the job very shortly before October 7th, and like everybody here, never expected to be confronting that, and certainly not in the first months of the job. And it wasn't until that DC conference, I think, that I felt the slightest sense of optimism about the job, and being in that community, having that connection, gave me hope for the first time, and also language to go back and talk about with my institution and strategy, and that's continued since. And I think one of the most useful practices, or one of the best things I've taken out of CAJM, is the conversations comparing and contrasting mostly the similarities of doing this work, Jewish storytelling, but also some of the differences in doing it in a global institution like the North Carolina Museum of Art versus a Jewish institution. And that's been very interesting and very important for me to have this community to connect with. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love hearing that community is what resonated with you, because we're all so far apart, and building community is definitely an important mission of KGEMS. Next, I'm going to call on Rio Daniel. Rio, I think you're here somewhere. So Rio is the CEO of the Center for Jewish History in New York City, with over a decade of experience in financial operations, nonprofit leadership, and strategic management. She has been with the center since 2019. Previously, she's held leadership roles at Vevo as the Director of Finance and at AHRC New York City as Assistant Controller. Rio holds a master's in economics from the University of Cambridge and brings expertise in financial planning, board engagement, stakeholder relations, grants management, and strategic partnerships. Do we see Rio's here?
Sorry, I know exactly where she is because we work in the same building and she's not here. So just move on. And she's
Okay,
very
great.
happy to be here, but she's not here.
Wonderful. I love this like little stealth network we have going on. Okay, next up is Robin. Robin, I see you. Robin Dorshow is a Minnesota native and comes from a rich heritage, as all four of her grandparents and four of her great-grandparents were third-wave Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe who settled in St. Paul, Minnesota. Robin has served as the executive director for the Jewish Historical Society of the Upper Midwest since 2016. She earned her BA in psychology and Jewish studies from the University of Minnesota, go Golden Gophers, and followed by a JD from William Mitchell College of Law.
Thank you. I appreciate being here very much. I'm having a little bit of a hard time. I'm getting a little echo, so hopefully you're not. It's been my great pleasure and honor to serve as the executive director at the Jewish Historical Society of the Upper Midwest since December of 2016. We cover not only Minnesota, but also North and South Dakota, much of Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan. really the history of the Dakotas is beyond fascinating, and every day I enjoy what I'm doing. Couple things that really resonated with me. This idea of third spaces. I first became acquainted with that term when I was doing some research for a deli exhibit, Jewish delis in the upper Midwest a few years ago. And the Jewish deli is a third space. And I just revisited that in an article I just submitted yesterday, actually, about delis in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the idea of the deli as a third space. And I think in the world, and kind of in all the craziness that's going on, the idea of a third space is incredibly important, more important than ever. And also, I've always kind of come to my job this idea of celebrating the Jewish history of this region. And it's only in the last couple of years that it's been more about really combating anti-Semitism. And I find that to be really unfortunate, but very, very motivating. Um, and just something that a little fun fact about myself that you might not expect. I'm very engaged and involved in Yiddish, and I just returned about 4 weeks ago from a week-long class at the Yiddish Book Center. I saw that Susan was here, who I did not have the opportunity to meet when I was out there. But studying Yiddish and learning about that world is really exciting to me, and I find that to be really a fun part and a little adjacent to what I do on a daily basis. Um, but I am very excited to learn from this wonderful group and bring what I can to the group itself. So thank you.
Thank you, Robin, and for the fun fact. B, I know I saw you here, B. Gerwitz, who, first of all, thank you so much for joining us and finding time in which I can only imagine has been a challenging few weeks. Really, we're standing with you and we're here for you for whatever you and your community needs. Your community is our community. But B is the executive director of the Capital Jewish Museum with 10 years of nonprofit leadership and an academic background in Latin America and Jewish history. Previously, she was the deputy director of the National Humanities Alliance, where she led advocacy efforts, expanding programming and diversifying funding. She has consulted for the National Endowment for the Humanities and the U.S. Department of State, and has taught at UC Berkeley and the University of Maryland and in New York City public schools. She's the author of Argentine Jews in the Wesleyan University and a PhD in history from UC Berkeley.
Hey everyone, thank you so much, Rodanna. I am delighted to be here. I will probably hop off pretty soon after. We still are a bit in crazy mode, but getting our bearings. And I just want to say that, over the past couple of weeks, but also in my first, 8.5 months in this position, I have been so delighted to enter into this Cajun community. It has been an essential source of support for me as I navigate this new role. I'm looking around at a lot of familiar faces of people who have just been extraordinarily generous with their time and insight and knowledge. And I'm very grateful for that. And I also know very well the power of professional associations, having come from the National Humanities Alliance, which is an association where we really focused a lot on exchanging best practices, know-how, experience, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of how we do our work on a day-to-day basis. And I think creating networks like this one, where we can have that opportunity to really roll up our sleeves and exchange our challenges and also what we've learned from those challenges is really invaluable in these kinds of roles. So I'm just delighted to be part of this community and to do more to support it, but also to just be closer up to all of the action so I can keep learning from all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Tracy Hurst-Woods. Tracy serves as the Chief Museum Officer and Deputy Director of the Sherwin Miller Museum of Jewish Art in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Since joining the museum in 2009, she has led major initiatives, including 2 successful accreditations with the American Alliance of Museums and the expansion of the museum's facilities. Tracy has raised over $6 million, overseen award-winning programs, and helped grow the museum's educational impact. She also serves on the board of Mizell Jewish Community Day School. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. I'm super excited to bring the Oklahoma Jewish perspective to a larger audience and showcase how we work with all the other minority groups within Oklahoma and what we do educationally, exhibits, and just daily input from all the different minorities that we work with in Oklahoma, including Greenwood Rising, which is showcases Black Wall Street, and the first Americans Museum that opened up about 2 years ago. So we're super excited, and I'm super excited to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. We're looking forward to having you. Next, we have a rabbi that we're bringing on. Eli Meyerfeld is the Chief Executive Officer of the Zeckelman Holocaust Center, where he has served since 2017. Under his leadership, the center has become Michigan's hub for Holocaust education, reaching over 100,000 people annually. And if I remember correctly, reaches teachers in every single district of the entire state of Michigan, including the upper part of Michigan, which is a fun little place that I've learned a lot about from him. He's currently leading a $100 million capital campaign to secure the center's future and oversaw the 2023 renovation of its permanent exhibit, which I've visited and seen and highly recommend if anyone finds themselves in the Detroit area. He previously served as the executive director of Yeshiva Beth Yehuda, earned a BS in engineering from Cooper and an advanced degree in rabbinic ordination. I should also mention that I think he was just named one of Michigan's top Michiganians.
Michiganians of the year.
Michiganians.
Yeah, thank you very much. So first of all, Robin and I, turns out, have overlapping area of interest because she includes the Upper Peninsula in her Upper Midwest Jewish activities. So we're gonna have to share some work on Houghton and these places. So that's very cool. I'm, I guess, a diversity pick because it's great to have representation from a Holocaust museum on the board. For us, the shift towards anti-Semitic incidents being an area that we focus on is different from what I've heard in all these conversations we've been having at KJM, because for us, it was sort of like, well, it was in history. We teach it as history, you know, like, don't do it again. But so it is sobering to be in a situation where we're seeing the levels of anti-Semitism rising both from left and the right in every community really in the country. Ours is no different. And so I'm looking forward to working with KJM to develop strategies that can be implemented in museums around the country, because I really feel like if there's something that works somewhere, we ought to be trying it elsewhere. And I'm a big fan of not invented here, does not matter. So I'm looking forward to a lot of collaboration and figuring out ways that KJM can continue to grow its influence under Christina, who's been really a thoughtful leader for us. So looking forward.
Thank you. Next, we have Rachel Stark. She is the Vice President of Education and Family Programs at the Skirball Cultural Center here in Los Angeles. For over 2 decades, she has worked in arts education, museum education, and nonprofit management. She previously worked in the education department at LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. She holds a BA in history and art history from the University of California, Los Angeles, and a master's in education and museum education leadership from Bank Street College of Education in New York. She's a native Angelino who loves nature walks. So Rachel, I think you're here.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be with you. Thank you for the invitation to join the board and for the conversations that I've been able to join so far. I'm a native Angelino. I'm a mom of a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. I am the proud product of LA schools, LA public schools, and I'm the proud product of Holocaust survivors and immigrants. And I see in this moment, you all have seen the news about what's happening in Los Angeles. The work we do in Jewish American museums is important work. And I feel, based on my history and based on where I sit in LA, I'm eager to tell a broader story of what our history is and what we can do. And I'm joining, I'm on the slate because I have had the great privilege of spending time with Frady Aber and doing work with her around Jewish inclusion education, which is my passion and my area of expertise. And so I'm eager to do more of that in this moment and help contribute to building a better world for my kids and your kids and grandkids and the people who don't know us yet. That's who I am.
Thanks, Rachel. Our last addition, Lizzie Meister, she is unable to be on this call, but she's the public programs manager at the Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience. She's originally, though, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and she lived in Vancouver to attend the University of British Columbia, where she earned a BA in anthropology. Her love for the South came during her time as a community engagement fellow in Jackson, Mississippi, as at the Institute of Southern Jewish Life. Before moving to New Orleans, Lizzie earned her master's in museology at the University of Washington, Seattle. So I look forward for all of us getting a chance to interact with her in Rio. And if you want to reach out to them on LinkedIn or by email and everyone here and congratulate them, we can begin this collaboration together.
All right, so we have to vote.
Before we go to the vote, I forgot to do one thing and simply say how delighted I am to have this slate of officers to lead our board. Jordana is not only presenting the slate today, but I am so happy to have her follow me as chair, should you all vote it so. Gemma Birnbaum as vice chair, Susan Bronson, my immediate past chair, as treasurer, and Alicia Babstein as secretary. And of course, I will be on the board or on the executive committee as immediate past chair. But I just want to say a huge shout out and thank you to all of you for all of the work you've put in thus far and for staying with it. Christine, go ahead.
Great. I was going to share a slide, but Anne told me that you guys didn't see my slides while I was talking, so I'm not going to do that. I apologize if that was the case and it was just me talking. I'm sorry about that.
No, I saw slides.
I saw your slides.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead
Oh,
with
excellent.
slides. It's great.
Okay, good. So I will drop in the chat instead, just to be on the safe side, the instructions. Each institution gets one vote. So if you have multiple members from your institution, now is the moment to decide who's going to be the person that votes. Each individual, of course, if you are registered as an individual member, you just get to vote as you. And you will have the option to vote. It's an up or down vote, yay for the slate, nay for the slate, or abstain. I'm going to launch the poll by Zoom. Your name will not be anonymous, but it will not be seen to others. But that way we make sure that everyone who's a member votes. This is for members only to vote. If you are not a member and you're on this call, you get to hear what we're saying, but you do not get to vote. If there are any questions about voting or the slate, I can also drop the slate into the chat. We've sent it out a couple times, so hopefully you've seen everybody and the bios, but we are voting for the executive committee, which Laura just read. There are a couple of members who are continuing their terms who do not need to be voted on. That's Lauren and Rebecca. They're in midterm. And then a returning board member that we did not mention, Hannah, at the Magnus, who is standing for re-election and has already been elected to 1 2-year term. So you will see that on the slate as well. Are there any pressing questions about the process?
Do we not get to put our heads on our desks?
You mean heads up, 7-ups? You want to vote anonymously? Is that?
That's the way we did it in grade school, but that's okay.
I've never done this before, so I'm just going based on what people tell me. All right, so can you guys see the poll? Do you see it? Okay, make your choice. I'm watching the numbers tick up, so take your time. We have some time. All right, I am a neutral party. I do not get a vote. I can see the results. Has anybody not voted who wants to vote? All right, by unanimous vote, the board slate passes, Laura.
Mazel tov, everybody. If I had a gavel, I would be handing it to Jordana right now. There you go.
All right, Jordana, I'm gonna let you take us out.
I just want to say that it's such an honor. I really appreciate this opportunity. I could not think of a more better equipped, like tenacious group of people to be in the positions of leadership that we are when we are facing one of the hardest moments for the American Jewish community. And I know each one of us here brings a unique perspective and high qualities, and really, like, all we can do is to continue to go from strength to strength, and no matter what happens, we have each other and we continue to forge ahead, but we can only do it when we're working together. My favorite passage from the Tanakh is that a community is too heavy for one person to hold, and I believe that to be true, and this community is gratefully being held by many extraordinary people. So wish you all the best of the rest of your day from a challenging city and a challenging country, but I know we will get through it.
Thank you. Thank you all. Congrats.
Congrats.